Coming up on Arirang News, North Korea launches a military reconnaissance satellite on its third attempt and claims it was successful. South Korea also confirms that the North Spy satellite has been put into orbit and responds with a partial suspension of the 2018 InterKorean Military Agreement. Britain rolls out the red carpet for a formal state visit and hosts a royal banquet for the South Korean first couple. Addressing the UK Parliament, President Yoon says the relationship between the two will be reborn as a true global strategic partners. Israel and Hamas agree on a first humanitarian pause since the recent war began, and the ceasefire in Gaza will last for 4 days in exchange for the release of 50 captives held in the enclave. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with the latest on North Korea's third satellite launch attempt. South Korea's military has acknowledged that the satellite launch last night seems to have entered the Earth's orbit. Though the North claims it as a success, military authorities here say it's too early to tell whether the satellite is functioning properly. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea's military has assessed that North Korea's so-called military reconnaissance satellite has entered orbit. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said Wednesday evening that the assessment was made after comprehensively analyzing its flight path as well as other signs. However, it said that more time for analysis is needed to determine whether the satellite is working properly together with the U.S. Speaking during a radio appearance on Wednesday, Seoul's Defense Minister Shin Won-sik also confirmed that the satellite appears to have entered the Earth's orbit. The assessment comes as North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency on Wednesday said that it succeeded in putting what it calls a military reconnaissance satellite into orbit late Tuesday night. Pyongyang had failed with its 2 previous attempts, once in May and once again in August. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was reportedly on site to observe the launch.
He warmly congratulated the executives, scientists, and engineers of the entire National Aerospace Development Administration and related organizations who most accurately and brilliantly implemented the decisions of the 8th Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea.
The state-run media also reported that the spy satellite will officially begin its reconnaissance mission on December 1st, after going through an adjustment period of 7 to 10 days. One expert says that even if the launch was successful, it's too early to tell whether the satellite will serve its purpose.
There's no concrete evidence that the 만리경 1호, the satellite launched this time, will have the capacity to provide reliable, high-quality resolution military photographs that can be actually used for military benefits.
Tensions in the region are expected to rise as Pyongyang vowed to launch more spy satellites in a short span of time. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
In response, South Korea partly suspended the 2018 InterKorean Military Agreement this afternoon, specifically the no-fly zones that ban aerial reconnaissance over the military demarcation line. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil has more.
On Wednesday, the Ministry of National Defense announced that the military will resume reconnaissance and surveillance activities along the military demarcation line as of 3 p.m. This means the South Korean military can now fly aircraft over the MDL to detect and monitor signs of North Korean provocations as it did in the past. The announcement came after the government decided to partially suspend the 2018 InterKorean Military Agreement, also known as the September 19 Military Agreement, following Pyongyang's spy satellite launch on Tuesday night. Earlier in the day, South Korean President Yoon led an emergency National Security Council meeting online during his state visit to the UK. Article 1, Clause 3 of the agreement states the extent of no-fly zones above the military demarcation line for all aircraft types. It also bans aerial reconnaissance activities within 25 kilometers of the MDL. Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy Heo Tae-geun strongly condemned Pyongyang's late-night satellite launch.
North Korea has launched a military reconnaissance satellite in an attempt to enhance surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities against South Korea, especially when our military has limited access to keep an eye on the North provocations due to the designation of the no-fly zones.
Senior officials of relevant ministries said the suspension will remain in effect until, quote, mutual trust is restored between the South and North. This is the first time that South Korea has officially declared the suspension of an InterKorean agreement. According to the Ministry of Unification on Wednesday, a total of 258 agreements have been made and documented between the two Koreas since 1971. Yonhap News Agency reported that North Korea has unilaterally declared a termination or annulment of such agreements more than 6 times. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
The United States strongly condemned Pyongyang's latest satellite launch, saying it's a violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. A similar message was sent from Japan too. Chung Won-ju with the details.
North Korea's latest spy satellite launch has invited strong condemnation from the United States and its partners because the UN bans North Korea from conducting satellite launches, calling them covers for tests of missile technology. The UN Secretary General condemned the latest launch and reiterated a call for the North to return to its path of denuclearization. U.S. National Security Council spokesperson called the launch a brazen violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. A U.S. State Department spokesperson said the launch employed ballistic missile technology, which UN resolutions ban North Korea from using. In brief remarks to reporters upon arriving at the Prime Minister's office on Tuesday, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida condemned the late-night launch, referring to it as a serious situation that affects the safety of people in Japan. Kishida also reiterated his commitment to continue working with the U.S. and South Korea to respond to Pyongyang's launches. The U.S., South Korea, and others have accused North Korea of shipping conventional arms to support Russia's war in Ukraine in exchange for Russian technologies to enhance its own military programs. Both North Korea and Russia have denied the accusations. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
North Korea's spy satellite launch comes at a time when a U.S. aircraft carrier is docked in Busan. And a day after the launch, the U.S. also sent a nuclear-powered submarine to South Korea. Amid evolving threats, South Korea is reportedly discussing ways to hold combined maritime exercises with U.S. and Japan this weekend. Bae-eun-ji has more.
The U.S. nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Santa Fe, docked at a port in Jeju on Wednesday in a show of force against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. The Los Angeles-class submarine is part of the U.S. Navy's Carrier Strike Group 1, along with the USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier that arrived in South Korea the day before. Seoul's defense minister Shin Won-sik visited the aircraft carrier on Wednesday and criticized North Korea's latest satellite launch. He said while the carrier is in South Korea, the country will lay out plans for a bilateral maritime exercise with the U.S., as well as a trilateral one with Japan, to be able to immediately respond to any type of threat from North Korea. According to government sources, South Korea is currently in talks with the U.S. and Japan to hold the joint drills involving USS Carl Vinson this weekend. A bilateral maritime exercise with the U.S. Carrier Strike Group 1 will likely take place on Saturday, and then a trilateral one with Japan's military forces on Sunday. The commander of the Carrier Strike Group said Wednesday that the visit reflects the mutual interest between Seoul and Washington, and stressed that the U.S. Navy will continue to train and share information with its allies.
The U.S.-ROC alliance remains at a high level to provide readiness, to provide protection for the Republic of Korea against any threat, any adversary. This includes the full range of U.S. defense capabilities.
The USS Carl Vinson is roughly 3 soccer fields long and can carry about 5,000 crew, in addition to more than 60 aircraft, including FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jets and E-2C Hawkeye early warning aircraft. It last visited South Korea in 2017 and is the 3rd U.S. aircraft carrier to visit the country this year, following the USS Nimitz arrival in March and the USS Ronald Reagan in October. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
In London, The leaders of South Korea and the United Kingdom will pen the Downing Street Accord on Wednesday, declaring an upgraded global strategic partnership. Deputy Principal National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho told reporters in a briefing that President Yoon Suk-yeol and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will sign the set of bilateral documents setting out their plans for closer cooperation in key strategic areas. These include trade and economy, as well as security, as both countries seek new sources of economic growth and face various geopolitical uncertainties. The new partnership will be an upgrade from the two countries' current broad and creative partnership, falling upon the 140th anniversary of diplomatic relations and 70 years following the end of the Korean War. In light of President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to the UK, the two countries are ramping up cooperation as part of their efforts to achieve net zero by adopting what's called the Clean Energy Partnership. The agreement between South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy was co-signed on Wednesday by the UK's Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. Cooperation between the two includes the clean energy transition with civil nuclear power development. Also, offshore wind is a sector the two will work together on. This also comes as the two countries signed a total of 9 MOUs based on nuclear power cooperation at the UK-Korea Business Forum on the same day. The South Korean first couple were treated to a royal banquet hosted by the British royal couple during their state visit to the UK. King Charles gave a toast with a quote from Korean poet Yoon Dong-ju, and President Yoon replied with a reference to Shakespeare. Our Oh Soo-young takes us to the scene.
Quoting timeless poetry, President Yoon Suk-yeol and King Charles III celebrated 140 years of diplomatic ties between South Korea and the United Kingdom at a state banquet in Buckingham Palace. The South Korean leader and First Lady Kim Gon-hee attended an official banquet hosted by King Charles in the opulent palace ballroom. Thanking King Charles for his hospitality, Yoon said that at the heart of Korea-UK relations has been their blood alliance in the fight for peace and democracy. He noted that the UK had dispatched the second largest number of troops to aid the South during the 1950-53 Korean War. Britain was the first European country to establish formal diplomatic links with Korea, signing a treaty of friendship and commerce in 1883. Both the President and the King agreed that their decades-long ties had been bolstered not only diplomatically and economically, but through cultural exchanges. Yoon highlighted Britain's model of parliamentary democracy, literary and scientific excellence, and musicians like the Beatles as strong sources of inspiration for Koreans and the world. Referencing Shakespeare's sonnets, Yoon raised his glass to the future as the two governments upgrade their relations to a global strategic partnership.
대한민국은 자유, 인권, 법치의 보편적 가치에 기반하여 영국과 함께 전 세계의 자유, 평화, 번영의 미래를 향해 굳건하게 협력할 것입니다. 이제 국왕 내외분의 건강, 또 한영 관계의 새로운 미래, 그리고 세계 평화와 번영을 위해 건배를 제의하겠습니다. To me, my fair friend, the United Kingdom, you never can be old.
King Charles also highlighted the importance of shared values and quoted the words of Korean poet Yoon Dong-ju, whose works inspired hope and resistance against Japan's colonial rule of Korea before and during World War II.
Korea's preservation of its sense of self amid bewildering change was perhaps what the poet Yoon Dong-ju, who so tragically died in captivity on the very eve of Korea's liberation, anticipated when he wrote, "While the wind keeps blowing, my feet stand upon a rock. While the river keeps flowing, my feet stand upon a hill."
The tie and tiara affair was held on the South Korean leader's first official day of his state visit, with some 170 guests, including eminent figures in politics, business and arts, including Samsung chief Lee Jae-yong and K-pop group Blackpink. Surrounded by vibrant displays of flowers in red, purple and pink, The horseshoe-shaped table was adorned with gold-gilded plates holding egg and spinach tartlets, Windsor pheasant, and a mango ice cream dessert, and decorations of pink sugar flowers resembling Korea's national flower mugunga or hibiscus. The South Korean president's official visit began on Tuesday with a royal greeting by the Prince and Princess of Wales, who drove with them to the Horse Guard Parade ceremonial ground to meet the King and Queen. The President and the King observed a 41-gun salute, 21 reserved for heads of state, with an extra 20 guns added given the royal venue, before heading to Buckingham Palace in a carriage procession. Following a private luncheon, Yoon was given a tour of South Korea-related items in the royal collection, including a letter sent by an emperor of Korea's Joseon dynasty Gojong to Queen Victoria, photos of Queen Elizabeth II's visit to South Korea, and the vase gifted to her. President Yoon and the First Lady will call again at the palace to bid farewell to King Charles on the last day of their state visit on Thursday. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, London.
Israel and Hamas have agreed on a 4-day humanitarian pause for the first time in 46 days of war. They have agreed to free 50 hostages held in Gaza and let humanitarian aid enter the enclave. Our Yoon has the latest.
The Israeli government and Hamas agreed on a 4-day pause in fighting on Wednesday to allow for the release of some hostages and the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. The state of Qatar released a statement confirming the success of its joint mediation efforts undertaken with Egypt and the United States. The statement says the start of the pause will be announced within the next 24 hours and last for 4 days, and that it is subject to extension. According to the statement, the agreement includes the release of 50 civilian women and children, hostages currently held in the Gaza Strip, in exchange for the release of a number of Palestinian women and children detained in Israeli prisons. According to Al Jazeera, the Israeli cabinet backed the agreement after talks on a Qatar-mediated deal that continued into the early hours of Wednesday morning, with the Prime Minister's office saying the deal would require at least 50 women and children to be released during the 4-day pause. The office added that the pause will be extended by 1 day for every additional 10 hostages released. There was no mention of exchanging Palestinian prisoners. Reports say Hamas released a statement confirming that 50 women and children will be released in exchange for 150 Palestinian women and children who are held in Israeli jails. The statement also says that Israel will stop all military action in Gaza, allowing for the entry of humanitarian aid trucks.
I think both sides are serious about their commitment to this truce. The fact that it took 46 days before a first truce has been agreed should tell us a lot. The United States, Qatar, as well as the Egyptians have been working very hardly behind the scene.
This is the first pause of the war, in which, according to Palestinian officials, more than 14,000 people have been killed in Gaza. That started on October 7th, when Hamas killed at least 1,200 people in an attack on Israel. However, Israel stands firm in its mission to destroy Hamas.
We are at war, and we will continue to fight until we reach all our goals.
According to Reuters, in a recorded message at the start of the government meeting, Netanyahu vowed the war would continue until Israel achieved all its goals to destroy Hamas and return all of the hostages taken. Yoon, Arirang News.
Moving on, South Korea will ease 167 regulations closely related to people's livelihoods to revitalize the local economy and to give people a helping hand. This is according to Prime Minister Han Duck-soo during a ministerial meeting on Wednesday. Some of the deregulations include permitting restaurants to hire foreigners to help with labor shortages. Until now, foreigners with E9 non-professional employment visas were not allowed to work at restaurants. Others include allowing online stores to sell contact lenses that had only been available at opticians. The announcement followed as the Office for Government Policy Coordination successfully eased around 1,600 kinds of regulations that were expected to create an economic effect of over 100 trillion won, or some $77 billion. Shifting gears, from film cameras to vinyl records, some millennials and Gen Zers are attracted to these retro items. Our An Sung-jin explains what's behind this trend and what it means for buying power of these young people.
The styles of the late 1990s and early 2000s have been back in fashion recently.
But this popularity of retro items goes beyond simply collecting vintage items. Rather, it is about the genuineness of living the moment and the authenticity of the nostalgia that attracts millennials and Gen Z to these retro products. Though pictures from these vintage cameras have a lower quality than modern smartphone lenses, each picture takes more thought and care, giving it value.
I feel like with the film camera, you're more in the moment, you see something that you want to capture and truly kind of like revisit kind of the significance of taking a photo and wanting to kind of freeze that moment and capture it forever.
According to a shopping platform popular with young consumers, retro cameras have been searched for 20 times more this May than the same time last year. Another blast from the past vinyl records are also seeing a resurgence. According to Luminet's music media report, 2022 marked the 17th consecutive year that sales of vinyl records rose in the U.S. One online retailer said vinyls in South Korea peaked in 2020 with a near 120% on-year increase from 2019. Some cafes in Seoul even have individual record players and headsets for each table to listen to vinyl records. For millennial and Gen Z listeners, it's the old-fashioned sound of vinyl that appeals to them.
As far as Gen Z goes, I think that there's kind of a novelty to the actual act of listening to music on vinyl as opposed to listening to it on Spotify or like a streaming service or something like that.
The saying oldies but goodies is the perfect description to explain the continuing demand for retro products among the millennial and the Gen Z. A professor in consumer science says that young people's consumption power can propel the popularity of anything retro that they find fresh or unique.
Since retro products are not something they have been exposed to, they find a modern twist to it and add value. The MZ generation has the purchasing power plus the ability to spread information on the internet, which makes their influence powerful in bringing new products to the market, whether it's food, items, or places.
She said that the younger generations also add their new own twist to these old retro items. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
The creator of ChatGPT, OpenAI, announced on Wednesday that it is bringing Sam Altman back as CEO with new initial board members. Accordingly, Altman shared a post saying that he is looking forward to returning. He said that his decision to join Microsoft a few days after he was ousted was based on deciding what is the best path for him and the team, adding that he is looking forward to building on the strong partnership with Microsoft. The agreement by OpenAI was reached 5 days after Altman was ousted, with the board's open letter saying he was, quote, not consistently candid in his communications. Following the original board's decision to oust Altman on Monday, nearly all of the company's employees threatened to quit and follow Altman to Microsoft.
A surge of Arctic air will start to settle in tomorrow. Maximum temperatures in Seoul will be dropping by about 2 degrees at 12 degrees Celsius. On Friday, early winter-like conditions will start to take over. Expect morning temperatures to plummet significantly. Meanwhile, a low-pressure system will be dropping showers for parts of central regions tomorrow. Starting for the daytime, light raindrops are expected for parts of Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheong-do provinces. For western Gangwon-do province, where temperatures are especially low, rain may turn into snowfall. Morning temperatures in Seoul and Gyeongju will be kicking off at 9 degrees Celsius. We'll see more cloud coverage for the daytime. Highs in Seoul will get up to 12 degrees, Gwangju 18, Gyeongju and Busan will be reaching 20 degrees. This weekend, clear skies are in the forecast for Seoul, but lows will be dropping significantly to the minus range. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the most up-to-date news. Good night.